So welcome. I'm so glad that you guys came, Brock and remind me your name, Brooke. Is that
Brooke,
right?
yeah.
Brock
Yep.
and Brooke. That's a tongue twister, but I love it. So if you wouldn't mind starting out, just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you guys are from, what your family's like, how long you've been in the program, anything that you'd like to start off, and then we'll dive in.
Brock?
Do you want to start, Brooke?
Sure. I don't know how much you want, but yeah, so my name is Brooke. I'm 42 years old, and we've been married for 20 years. We have 5 children. The oldest one's 19, the youngest is 4. And yeah, just we've been doing this program since December, 1st of December. And yeah, we've just really enjoyed it. I don't know what else you want, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's a great start.
I'm not good at introductions.
No, that's perfect. And amazing that you have 5 kids, 20 years married. That's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. So way to go. And then Brock, anything you would add, maybe what you guys do for work or where you live, anything you want to share?
Yeah. Been had our own general contracting business since June of 2022. So been in the industry for 7, 8 years and then broke off on our own. So yeah, been doing that. Felt like we've always made enough money and been blessed with enough income. But we, yeah, haven't always in 20 years, haven't been the best at, well, we haven't done budgeting or known, couldn't tell you exactly where all our money has gone. So yeah, have tried to do a few different budgets and spreadsheets and different things, but nothing ever worked as far as sticking. And then yeah, I saw you guys on LinkedIn and knew you guys were building something that was right, in line with, I felt like something that could be really good with what we wanted. And then yeah, we talked, Brooke and I, and then finally pulled the trigger. I think it was, yeah, we've been doing the program, I think, since the beginning of December, but I think just a little before that, we had connected and got on board. And just before that, I think Brooke and I had, put all of our credit cards down and our debt and kept track. October, I can't remember if it was October, November, we kept track of our expenses. So we had a decent idea of where we're at and seeing that we were overspending, quite a bit more than what we were bringing in and just using credit cards to make up the difference. What was interesting though, even though we're making more than we had ever made. And so I know I felt like we didn't want to keep doing that. And I know Brooke felt the same way. Just so it was great. And I think one thing that Sensei helped us with is just knowing where all our money was going so that we could make changes. Our grocery bill, our household bill, my eating out, and our family's eating out on a daily basis. Just a lot of categories like that yeah, that we could dial in. So huge help there. And then just a plan to the roadmap. I love the roadmap part of it, to be able to see what the plan is to get out of debt, and then seeing that we have flow each month. We don't have to get into debt anymore. We can make a plan to stay out of debt. So
wow, I love it. You just answered like 10 questions all in one. So you're very concise. I love it. But just to dive in, a few things that you said that I wanted to touch on and go a little deeper on. But you were talking about when you first before the program, right? Pre-Sensei, what was money like then? How was it emotionally? What were you guys working on? From what I gathered from what you already said, and then you can add on to this too, but it sounds like it was not really a major thought as far as the management goes, weren't really budgeting, weren't really doing anything like that until maybe a few months right before, when you kind of had the reality check of, you sat down and you looked at everything and you said, okay, we want to live differently. This is not how we want to live our life. Let's make a change. Are there any other things in the whole 20 years of managing money? What was that like? Were there other stress points, or was it just kind of like, oh, this isn't really bothering us? What was that dynamic like?
Well, I'll talk, and then I know Brooke probably wants to say something too as far as that goes, but we actually didn't talk about it much because we didn't have a good system. We knew it was an issue, and so we, at least for me, we kind of just tucked it under the rug. And there's huge cycles, we'd get into debt for things, a vacation or just overspending or Christmas, and then we would make more money and pay it off. And so it's just this cycle, but just, yeah, not having a good system in place, and not talking about it. And so that was another thing that is huge that I love. And I think Brooke feels the same way, as the weekly check-in.
Mm-hmm.
And we even just talked about that last night with our weekly check-in, is like, even we met the week before, there was still quite a bit to go over and go through. And so it's critical to just continue to have that weekly check-in. So high fives on having the weekly check-in as part of your system.
Great. I love that. What would you say, Brooke?
So just kind of how we managed money beforehand.
Yeah.
So I feel like, like Brock said, like we've always made enough money, but before he went on his own, like he had a set salary. And so we knew what was coming in, but we had a hard time scaling back on the things that maybe we didn't need, and we felt like, well, he doesn't quite make enough.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of canceling subscriptions or like, just scaling back on our what is it called? Our expenses. He was like, well, I just need to make more money. And so, but then when he went on his own and he started making all this money, I, for one, was like, finally, we have enough and we're just going to keep buying and going on vacations. And then we realized, we're not doing well still, because we're making more than we spend still.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of our mentality. And then it was a fight every time we'd come together, because we'd be like, I would blame him for eating out so often, and
Mm-hmm.
he's really nice and never blamed me, but I wasn't being the best steward over our money either. Like, we just were spending way too much and not like being accountable for what we'd spend, because we didn't want to talk about it, because then we would fight about it. So we just kind of like brushed it aside and we'll just talk about it later. So and that's really been our mentality for 20 years. Like it's always worked, and our needs have been met, and our kids are happy and have what they need. But the piece that comes with staying within a budget and having extra to pay off that debt, having the flow to pay off the debt and seeing it go down and being excited for the next month's flow, like, is super exciting. I've never been excited about our finances. It's just been a source of like true anxiety for me. And so, that's kind of how it was before and how we're shifting into a new mentality now. So.
I love that. So it worked on paper as far as the sweeping it under the rug, but it didn't necessarily work as far as like actually enjoying life, enjoying talking about money, like all these other pieces of it weren't working. Is that pretty good summary?
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
So now switching gears a little bit, which you've also touched on a few of these, but what is money like now? You're only about 2 months into the program, right? So it's not a huge amount of time, but what have you noticed as far as what money is like, what emotions come up? What is that like now?
I feel like it's just like when we did the check-in last night, like we asked ourselves one of the check-in questions, like, how do you feel about your personal finances? And before I just would be really negative, like we're making way too much to be in this much debt. We should be further along than this, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was. And I was able to honestly say, like, look what we did the last couple of months. You can't.
You mean boy?
A toy. You gotta stay right there.
Mom.
Mom,
Mom, I
sorry.
fell off my
You're
bed.
totally good.
You need to stay inside.
I
Go get your
know.
iPad. Get your iPad.
I'm good now.
Okay. Yeah, that's my life, getting interrupted and not
I feel ya.
following train of thought.
No worries.
But yeah, I'm looking at money as more of a positive thing that can get us to where we need to go, and it's not so, yeah, it doesn't bring anxiety to me as much anymore. It still does, because
Mhm.
I still tend to look at that huge number that we have to get out of, but it is so nice to see, like Brock
Progress.
said, the roadmap and that progress. Like, we know this is going to this, and we have a plan and someone to keep us accountable. And yeah, my money mindset has completely changed. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
I love that. And I love that it's only been 2 months, like that it can be that drastic. I mean, like you said, not sugarcoating, not everything's perfect, not everything's, solved yet. You still have a whole lifelong journey ahead, right? Money is always going to be a thing. But the fact that it can have more of that positive connotation and that excitement around it is huge. So
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, for sure.
And what about you, Brock?
When I think so, to go from, I think when we did our own spreadsheet in October, we spent more than we made. So we were in the net, we had negative flow, and then to go from negative flow to, a couple $1,000s of positive flow in just a couple months
Huge.
is huge. And it's being aware.
Yeah.
Just knowing where things are going, and seeing a certain line item and just knowing, like, no, that's, I don't want to be like that, or I can adjust that and still live comfortably. So just being aware of our numbers is huge.
Love that too. So that was going to be my next question. So you're always one step ahead, but diving into the numbers as specifics, how much were you when you first filled everything out, when you first did your spreadsheet, how much in the negative were you? And then versus now, how much do you have in flow?
Yeah, and I can't remember exact, but it was a couple thousand. It was in between $2,000 and $3,000 that we were negative flow. And even you can see that from our credit card debt. Most of our credit card debt is from just overspending. So to go from, a couple $1,000s of negative flow to, I think it's right around 2,200 of positive flow in just a couple months is huge. And then having a plan to get out of it. So that you could look at that number of debt as a big number, but to have a plan and to see, okay, if we pay off this and then keep doing this month after month, and it has a spot to go, we can see that by the end of this year, we will be close to having gotten rid of most of the credit card debt. And then there's a couple other, a truck and a couple other things on there that we'll continue to pay on. But the majority of our overspending, will be gone and paid off. So it's huge.
Huge. Yes, that is amazing. Just thinking about the negative 3,000 to positive, or 2,000, I don't know. We don't know the exact number, but 2,000 to 3,000 to 2,200, almost another $4,000 that you're able to find month to month. And then to, like you said, it's not just now you have all this money and great. It's like has a very clear plan of where that money is going, you can visualize, where am I going to be a year from now? Like, this is realistic. This is happening. I'm not just dreaming that someday we'll be able to get out of debt and we'll not have this anymore. So amazing.
Yeah, the other thing, sorry, that I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, is the short-term savings plan, because that was always kind of an unknown, like, we know these expenses come up. It's not a set amount, but I love that structure and plan that you guys have. So, we have our school fees, we have our
Mhm.
dreamlining, we have our pets,
Christmas.
car repair, and Christmas and gifts, house repair. So we have all these things, and that's part of why we would go into debt, because we'd have this big chunks of expenses and we hadn't planned for it. So you throw it on a card and just figure out how to pay for it later. But now we have our Marcus account and we have a couple months built up, so we have $2,500 in our Marcus account that gives us that ability to take care of things that we know will pop up. We just don't know exactly when and how much. So that's huge.
Yes, I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes we have in our mind this idea that if we're in debt, it's like, you picture like Confessions of a Shopaholic or something with like 20 different credit cards and you're just out like going crazy and doing all this stuff. But that's very often not the case, right? Even when you're talking about eating out or overspending, I highly doubt that that was what the overspending looks like. It all makes logical sense. It's like the kids need these school supplies or these clothes, or we had a roof leak, like we got to fix this. What are we going to do? Right? It all is logical, and you do need to, but having that difference of like setting aside that money, expecting it like in the short-term savings versus the credit card thing is really huge. So I love that you brought that up. Okay, so then my next question is, with the roadmap goals, have you been able to hit any yet in the last couple months? Like what goals have you been able to accomplish so far?
Brooke, do you want to go over that?
Well, a huge one, because we started in December. Dan was able to help us like come up with the money for my nephew got married in California. And so before we met Dan, we had planned on doing this. We're like, we got to go to the nephew's wedding, and we bought plane tickets. And then we realized like, wow, this is going to cost a lot more than we anticipated. And Dan was like, look, we're not going into any more debt in December. So what can you sell? What can you do? What can you save? And we were able to start right away. We paid for that trip. Like, that was the first roadmap goal, was pay for Braxton's wedding. And so when we did that, and then he's like, and you're not going into debt for Christmas. And we're like, okay, we're not going into debt for Christmas. So
Yes.
we were able to pay for that as well. Like, I
Wow.
did mini photography shoots to make a little extra money. I donated plasma. We sold our dryer. We just thought of ways that we can actually pay for it now. And that was so relieving to not put it on a credit card. So it's just, and maybe the kids got less Christmas than they had in the past, which for one day I felt guilty, but they were happy. And honestly, in the past, when they got tons of stuff, they were happy for that day, and then they'd forgotten what they got. And so I felt that little bit of guilt, because we'd lived a certain way for so long. And then, we were on this plan, so it had to be less. And then, so after so we paid for the Braxton's wedding, Christmas, and then one of my student loans we paid for from the next flow. And then, is that all, Brock, or have we paid for something else?
Yeah, the next chunk this month with this month's flow is going to be a handful of medical bills.
Oh yeah, like past due medical bills. Yeah.
And it's miscellaneous stuff like physical therapy for a hurt wrist. I had a thing with a bad cough, and I think Bo has had a couple things, so just taking care of a couple $1,000s in past due medical bills. So
That's
And
gonna
we,
be so good. Yes.
yeah, well, and we hadn't mentioned to Dan our medical debt because we were still in the process of trying to figure out what we were supposed to pay and what they were supposed to pay. And so I finally was able to just dive into that and find out what exactly are we paying and like which ones are in collections, which ones aren't. And he's like, well, let's put it on the roadmap. And so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like that's not something I would have thought of it, but it would have been in the back of my mind, like, we need to pay this off. But he's like, no, let's stick it right in the front. You're going to pay this off.
Mhm.
And that has been a game changer for me because that is a huge anxiety. Medical debt for me is like huge, yeah, feelings of, yeah, just, it's just hard because you can't always pay it right then. And a lot of times I have to work with the insurance and I get nervous about that. And so to have it on the roadmap and just to know which one I have to pay is incredible. So
That's huge. Yeah, the organization of it, of like you guys both know
Mhm.
exactly what you're working towards, what's
Yep.
happening, where you're going. Yeah, that's really, really big. Love that.
Yeah. And I'm excited for
okay.
the interest, like for the next, like the credit card ones, because then like we won't be paying those minimum payments anymore. That'll go back into our flow. Like it's exciting because it's just going to get bigger
Yes.
as we go down the line. So
Yes, so true. So true. It just keeps going up from here. And you're
yeah.
already killing it after just 2 months or whatever. So yeah, that's um so two last questions. One is, how do you feel like this has affected your relationship? This program, doing this together.
I'm not afraid to talk to Brooke anymore. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. I wasn't
Well,
ever
around
afraid to-
finances, I guess that's true, right? Because you swept
no,
it under
it's
the rug, but yes.
but it's just kind of the last thing that we, we talk about everything, and
Mhm.
we talked, we had a good relationship before, and we would talk about things, but finance was the one thing that we didn't really talk about it that much. But now having the weekly check-in is huge, and it's just time where I actually enjoy sitting down and going through things and talking through things and getting to hang out with Brooke. So
Love that.
Yeah. So what was your question again? How has it changed our relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like what Brock said, we're just able to fully talk about everything that's good or bad or ugly or whatever we need to talk about. And it's not a scary issue anymore. And so even though we still get, like yesterday, I got a little bit of upset about something, a little bit nervous about something, like overspending somewhere. But overall it stayed mostly positive and there were no tears, where usually in the
Mhm.
there would be crying and like blaming and all this stuff. And so, and then obviously like we would avoid it. But so it's just, and then like during the week, if I bring up something, Brock teasingly said, well, I'd be happy to talk about this on our Sunday check-in. But then even though
Dan does it to me
he
too.
was
So I guess.
joking,
Yes.
he was also serious. Like,
Yeah.
let's wait. This can
Mhm.
wait, and we can actually be sitting down, looking at numbers, and not just going off feelings like, oh, I think this happened. We're like, let's talk about it at our weekly check-in. Like, that's why we have it. We don't have to talk about finances too much, but we definitely need to at least talk about it once a week. So
Yes.
it's been good for just like an overall boost to our relationship.
I love that you said that, because I agree. I mean, we talked about this in the course, but where someone's doing the dishes and then they're like, hey, I just saw this transaction come through, and they're like totally out of left field, disoriented. That's when a lot of the arguments come up. So good on you, Brock, to be like, hold up. let's check our emotions, make sure we're in a good neutral state before we dive into this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
love that. Great example.
Well,
Okay.
and having a
yeah.
dedicated time to do that, because there was a couple things that I had a question about too that I saw on Monarch, but knowing we had a set time that we're going to meet, I knew I didn't need to bring it up because we can talk about it in that set time. So that's huge.
Yes. And I agree. If you don't have the set time and you're just like, well, we're not going to talk about it because it's emotional, that wouldn't work either, because then they all
Yeah.
build and build and build and build. And then when you do have that talk, it's like explosion, right? And that's when the tears come and all the like built up feelings. So yes,
Mhm.
love that. And then my last question is, what would you tell someone who is considering joining Sensei?
I mean, I've already talked to quite a few people and sent some referrals because it's huge. I think it's great, and it's really can be for anybody. Um, I have a decent understanding of finances and budgets and things, and not that I'm great at it. I'm getting better and I'm improving, but um, just having a system in place to have Monarch, being able to see all the transactions and categorizing things and having your budget and you can having the ability to see what your budget is, what you've spent and what you have remaining, like that's huge.
Mhm.
Just to have that visibility. If you talk with experts and they, know your numbers is what a lot of them say. And so having that ability to know our numbers as a family and to make a plan and just know that we can improve, we know where we've been, we know where we've fallen short, but now we have a roadmap and a game plan and a system to get better, and we don't ever have to go back to our old selves. So
Yes, so much hope in that message of like, it doesn't have to be like that ever again. Like you have a
mhm.
really clear path of how this is your new normal. Like you're living
Yeah.
it, you're proving it to yourself week after week that this isn't just like a fad diet that you're going to do for a little bit and then go right back. You have like meaningful things that can carry you through.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
150 a month, some people think that's a lot. It's actually it's pennies. And I know everyone's financial situation is different, but we went from negative couple thousand cash flow each month to positive couple thousand. And we have 2,500 in our short-term savings in addition to that. So it really is pennies, the cost. You guys could charge quite a bit more and it would still be a huge value. So
Love that. Thank you. Well, great. Well, I know. Oh, okay. You just got back, Brooke. I was going to say
Yeah.
Brooke stepped out, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Brooke.
No, Brock took my thoughts at the very end of his thoughts. So, no, because I've been on the fence trying, thinking that I knew we needed help, but it always costs money, or the free
Yeah.
ones aren't actually good enough, I would say, to really help you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew getting someone to help us was essential. But I'm like, we're trying to save money. Why were we spending money? That was always my holdup. So I
Yeah.
would tell anybody you're not going to get a toy. Sorry.
You're good.
I would tell anyone that is on the fence about Sensei that your money, you will make up your money tenfold. And I know you have a guarantee as well, which helped me as like this saver that, if you don't make up, I don't know the exact guarantee, but if you don't make up your money in such and such amount of time, then you will get a refund. And so that guarantee is huge for people that are worried about that. But then as you get into the system, like Brock said, $150 is nothing compared to what you can gain from doing the program and doing it well. And it works if you do it. Like if you
Yes.
go through the steps and make a plan and do what you're supposed to, it will work. So
Mic drop. Love that.
Yep.
Yes. Well, great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and taking the time to share this. I'm so inspired even just listening to you of like, just a lot of times we've done these like later in the program And this is one of our first times doing it, you know, like right after the system's complete, let's do it instead of waiting till they're a year or 2 years in the program, because our program is a longer term program. And I'm just amazed at how much, like, we call it the personal finance accelerator, but literally like the acceleration is blowing my mind of how fast that you guys have been able to do this in just a couple months. So you're doing amazing. And I'm so excited to keep hearing about your progress and watch you just flourish. So any other last minute questions or thoughts or anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, a year from now, so January 29th, 2025, you know, can do another quick short thing and say that, you know, we've kept the debt off.
Yes. Let's do it. Put it in the
Yeah.
calendar right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
We
I
have a
love that.
roadmap on our roadmap too. We have a big family vacation. Our son's getting home from his mission the end of the year, and we're planning a big family vacation that's on our roadmap too, in addition to after we get out of most of our credit card debt, and that's huge too, that we can still enjoy life and live and, you know, have awesome experiences for our kids and our family, in addition to getting out of debt and working on that. So
Yeah. I just want to share really quick just how one time I kind of felt guilty for buying myself something on Amazon. It was just last month because I've been used to just buying whatever I want. Like I see something, I get it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt guilty, but it was like, I realized like that's why we have a his and her budget. And it
Mm-hmm.
actually gives more freedom because you know that you have that amount and you can spend it if you want, but you don't have to, but you can if you need to, you know?
Yes.
And so I'm like, what am I going to do for my her budget this month? And
Yes.
like, it makes me excited. And so it's like the term kind of less is more. Like
Yeah.
the less you spend and the more purposeful and I can't think of the word right now, but
Intentional, maybe.
intentional, that's
Yeah.
the word. So those intentional purposes or those purchases are a lot more meaningful because you're not just buying this and that and you're like, I don't know what's even coming in on Amazon. Like now I
Right.
know exactly is what is coming on Amazon on my
Yes.
doorstep. I know what it is, you know?
Yes.
So, and that just
Love
gives
that.
more freedom than less, which is weird because you think that mentality earlier on was just buy whatever you want. And it doesn't feel restricted because I don't feel like I have to buy cheap things. The word is frugality rather
Mhm.
than cheap, and you know, that type of mentality switch too.
Totally. Totally. I'm so glad you guys both brought that up with the vacation and with the spending, that it doesn't have to be this like live or die, like can't breathe. Like you guys are able to put those things. It doesn't mean you can have everything. And maybe for a season you have to cut things or whatever, but you're still hitting goals and able to enjoy life. So I love that,
Right.
debunking that myth, because that is a huge one that oftentimes we think is going to be the case. So
Yeah.
love that.